Welcome back to IASTech. In this video, we are going to learn how to navigate to another page in Angular 17. And currently, you can see my screen where we have a list of 11 items that we are going to cover in this video. So let's start. I already have my Angular 17 project created and it is currently running in the browser. So let's start from the router link. This is the simplest and most common way to navigate to another page using Angular templates. So before demonstrating that to you, I need to create a component and create a route to load that component. So let's do that. For that, I will run a command ng-generate c and the name of the component that I want to generate. I want to generate component with the name page1 and press enter. The component has been generated. So let's create another component page2. Now let's add the router outlet in the app.component.html. Okay, the router outlet has been added. Now let's go to the app.routes and here I will add all of my routes that I want to add. So let's register our first route and here I will give it a name like page1. You can give it whatever name you prefer, component and the component name page1 component. All right. Now let's add the second page component route path page2 and component would be page2 component. Let's import it as well. Let's add the links to these components one by one. So here I will add the link in this way, a router link. Let's add the a tag first and here I will add the router link. So now here I will specify the path that I want to mention. As this is just a static string, so I don't need to add the square brackets here. I can just keep it simple and here let's specify the route that would be page1 and within the a tag I will add page1. Okay, save it. So here you can see we have the page1 text, but strange thing is that it is not clickable. The reason is that right now the router module is not imported in our app.component. We are using the Angular 17 standalone component, so we have to add the router module in the app.component. Then it will work. Now if you will open the browser, you will see that now it is clickable and you can see the color has been changed. So let's click on that and now you can see page1 works. That content is coming from the page1 component. Now next example is that we will use the router link with the parameters. So we have to define the route with the parameters. So in the second route, I will define parameter in this way, add slash and then specify the parameter that you want to pass. So for example, I want to receive user ID, save it. Now let's add the second a tag to add the link for the page2, save it, and it will not work. The reason is that we did not pass the parameter. So add slash, add any random ID, save it, and now you can see the URL on the bottom left side of the browser. So if you click on that, it will take you to that page or that component and route, and you can see the content is also there. Now we want to get the ID from the URL. So let's go to the page2 component and here I will inject the route from the activated route service. So for that I will use inject function and pass the activated route class, save it. Now I will use constructor and here we will use this .route.params. Params gives you the observable that you can subscribe to. So let's do that .subscribe and within the subscribe function we will pass the callback function that will receive the params object and now we can display the user ID. So let me actually create a variable user ID and by default I will give it empty string and now showing on the console we will use params and user ID, save it. Now let's go to the page2.component.html and here I will add the heading page2, save it, and after that let's add the user ID in this way. Okay, so now look at this. We are on the page 2 with the ID in the URL and the ID is being printed here. If you make changes in that, you will notice that the ID has been updated on the component as well. You can go back to the page 1 and let's go back to the page 2. Now we will demonstrate you how to navigate programmatically using the router service. So let's open the app.component and here I will inject the router service. Router is equal to inject, and I will pass the router service, and make sure to import it as well from the angular/router. And now let's create a function navigate, and in this function I have used the service router and used the function navigate, and we have passed the path of the route where we want to navigate. Now let's create a button in the HTML that will call that function on click, navigate to page 1. Okay, save it. Now here I will call the navigate function on click, and let's test it. So right now I am on the page 2. Let's click on the navigate to the page 1, and now I am on the page 1 and we are navigating with the help of the JavaScript. Okay, now let's create another function that will navigate with the parameters. So navigate to page 2, and here I have called the navigate function, and I have gave it an array that has 2 elements. First element is the path of the route, and second argument is the parameter that we want to pass. So this parameter is basically the user ID that we already have defined. So now let's register this, call this function on another button click. Let me add a div here so that it could go to a separate line. Let's add a BR tag as well. Okay, now let's copy paste this button, and here I will say navigate to the page 2, and let's update the function from navigate to the navigate to page 2, and let's save it. Now let's click on the navigate to the page 2, and you can see we are passing the ID and both buttons are working. You can go to the function, you can change the ID to whatever you want, and you can see that it's working. In the real world you may have the ID in a variable like that. Save it, and you can pass the ID to make it dynamic, or you may receive the ID from the parameter to pass it. Okay, it is still working. Now let's see how we can navigate using the query parameters. Okay, so let's create a function navigate to page 2 with query params. Okay, and let's define the ID like above, so you can keep it whatever. And now I will use this dot router dot navigate, and here so this part is same, but we have to pass an additional parameter of this function that would be an object, and in this object we are passing the property query params that will further contain an object, and within that object we can add as many query parameters that we want. So I just passed the name, save it. Now let's create another button for this purpose. So okay, I created a button. Let me pass the function name on click. Okay, when we will click on that function on that button, it will call this function and it will pass the query parameters in the URL. Let's click on that, and on the URL you can see that query parameter has been passed on navigation. Now let's go to the page 2 component. We can get the query parameters as well from the URL. So in order to get the query parameters from the URL, we will use this dot route dot query params dot subscribed and pass it a callback function like before. And here I will receive the params or query params, and now we can create a variable query params. By default it is an empty object, but as soon as we get something we will update it, and then we will display the query params object in the HTML. So let's do that. Here I will add the BR tag, and I'm using the JSON pipe and using the query params to print the JSON. So now let's test. You can see that in the URL, in the HTML, we are displaying the query param. Okay. At this time, you can see there is no query parameter. That's why we have an empty object. And if we have the query parameter in the URL, then you will see that specific. Or you can add extra parameters as well. Like here, let's add age is equal to this, and that is also included in this object. Or you can go to the app component.ts and you can pass additional argument like age 34 and city New York. Save it. Now if you click on that, all of those properties are added in the query string variables, and these are also included in the object that is being printed on the computer. Now we will see there is another way to navigate programmatically is by using the navigate URL method. You can use that as well, but in that uh, you don't need to pass an array. That would be a single string. So let's do that. Navigate by URL, and here you will pass the path directly without specifying an array. And now let's create another button, and the button has been created. It will call the function on click, so let's click on that. As soon as I clicked on that, it navigated to the page 1. Now we will use the location service. So for more control, you can use the location service which allows navigation back and forward. So let's try that. I will create two functions, go back and go forward. But in order to do that, I need to inject another service, location property, and in the inject function pass the location service, and make sure to import the location service from angular/common. So here I will add location this way. All right. Now here in the go back function, I will use this dot location dot back function, and in the go forward, I will use this dot location dot forward. Save it. Now let's add these two buttons, and in this button, I will add the click event go back, and let's add the text go back, and in the second button, I will add the go forward button. Okay, now let's try. So I'm going to click on the go back, and you can see it took me to the back, previous page. If you click on the go forward, it will take you to the next page. So these buttons are behaving in the same way like you do when you click on these back and forward arrows. Earlier we saw that how to use the JavaScript to navigate along with query parameters, but you can use the directive as well in the HTML directly to pass the query parameters. So for example, here let's create another a tag, and in that a tag I have passed the query params directive, and we are using square brackets so that we could pass the JavaScript object to it. So I am passing the ID, save it. It can be anything, and make sure to pass the ID here, and it can be anything like name XYZ, and age can be anything. Save it. Now let's try it. If I click on this, you will notice that it has took us to page 2 along with all of the parameters and query string parameters. Further, if you are using the navigate by URL function for some reason and you really want to pass a query string variable, you can simply pass it in this way. Add a question mark and pass all of the variables that you want to pass, and it will still work. You can pass multiple parameters by concatenating them with the AND operator. Further, you can also use the conditional navigation as well. For example, you have some variable, let some condition, and its value, let's suppose, is true. Okay, you can say if some condition is true, then take us to this page, otherwise take us to a different page. So in this way you can conditionally navigate based on some logic. So this is just a very simple example. You can use your own logic, and that can be more complex. Next and last thing is using guards. You can control the navigation using guards for authentication and other conditions. So for that, we first have to create a guard. So let's do that. To create a guard, I will create ng generate g and the name of the guard, press enter, and it will ask some questions. Which type of guard you want to use? I want to create can activate guard. So if you want to select a different one or all of them, you can click down arrow to go to that specific type and press the space that would be selected. I just want to select the can activate, so just press enter and that would be selected, and the guard is also created. Now we have the guard created. So here we can have some condition, like for example, you have a variable or something, or you have a function somewhere like function is logged in, and here you can pass return true or false based on the current state. And here you can check if user is not logged in, you can return false, otherwise you can return true. And further, if it is you are going to return true, before returning that, you can navigate user to a different path. So for example, if they are not authenticated, you can navigate them to the login route. But right now we cannot use this because this is not a class, this is a functional guard. So for that I need to inject the router by using the inject function. So let router is equal to inject and pass the router Angular class to it. Okay, save it. Now let's create a login component as well. Ng generate c login, and let's add the route for the login page, path login, and for the login we want to load a component, login component, and make sure to import it as well. Save it. Now it's time to apply the guard to our route. So let's suppose I want to protect this route. For that I will add can activate and pass the guard that we just created. We can pass multiple guards as well. Right now we have only one guard to use, so I just added one in that array, and let's import that guard as well. Once that is done, you will notice that you will not be able to access this page 2 until unless you are logged in. So right now in the guard, the current value of the is logged in is true. If you set it to false, then you will notice that it will take you to the login page. So let's try that. I'm going to return false, save it. Okay, you can see that it immediately took you back to the login page. So let's suppose you are on the page 1. If you try to go to the page 2, it will automatically take you to the login page because you are not logged in. So these are the most common methods to navigate to another page in Angular. The choice of method depends on specific requirements and context of your application. I hope that I could provide you some value in this video. If you think that this was useful, then please don't forget to like and share this video, and also please subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified and stay updated for my upcoming videos. Also, if you have any questions or feedback or suggestions, then please leave them in the comment section below. I would be happy to reply them as soon as possible. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.